I love Spider-Man. Of course I do. Everyone does. He's the flagship character of Marvel Comics. He's the everyman superhero that everyone from anywhere can relate to and enjoy on any level. And because everyone can relate to Spider-Man in their own ways, it's led to several different interpretations of the character in several different mediums. You got the classic Ditko run, the Ultimate Universe, a kick-ass video game, the 90s cartoon, and spectacular animated series, my personal favorite and definitive Spidey universe, please for the love of God bring this show back, and of course 3 different film adaptations. You all know them, you all love most of them, and you all can't wait until the next installment of his current franchise makes its way to theaters soon. Or at least, some of us are. See, after the release of Spider-Man Homecoming, and the dare I say amazing 2018 the webhead had with the aforementioned PS4 game, Spider-Verse, and... oh yeah, that happened. What was I talking about again? After his first solo outing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, suddenly there was a lot of Spidey stands that came out of the woodwork with some not so nice words for this interpretation of the character. Now for the record, I like Homecoming. I think it's a good Spidey film and an overall solid entry in the MCU. Here's where it's placed in my tier list. I'll admit some of the criticisms I agree with. A more explicit acknowledgement of Uncle Ben would be nice, and a bigger focus on Peter's responsibility as a hero over his fancy new suit would go a long way. I'd recommend Troy Oboyo 17's Fanboy Rewrite video if you want to know my perfect interpretation of the film. But anyway, whenever someone comes out with the next hot take on MCU Peter, I keep seeing the same argument brought up over and over again, basically amounting to the same thing. It's not as good as the Raimi films. The original Spider-Man trilogy, directed by horror legend Sam Raimi and starring Tobey Maguire, was more or less responsible for the modern comic book movie landscape we live in, with its bright colors, creative action, and attention to detail in accurately bringing its source material to life, which wasn't very common at the time.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
I remember seeing them when I was younger, and I still have fond memories of all of them. Yes, even Spider-Man 3. As the years went on, I looked at them a bit more critically as still good, but kinda silly in retrospect. It wasn't until Homecoming came out that I started seeing the downpour of support for the Raimi films, specifically Spider-Man 2. Now, even before the fan outpour, Spider-Man 2 was constantly being touted as one of the greatest superhero films ever made, right up there with The Dark Knight and Richard Donner's Superman. And the praise for it, looking back on it, was definitely well-founded in places. But now that the current iteration of Spidey is being deemed inferior compared to what came before, I started to wonder whether or not the original trilogy was actually as good as I remember. So I started from the beginning and popped in Spider-Man 1, and... wow, this movie is good. Like... really good. Maybe it was all the mumbo-jumbo from film school stuck in my head, but hot damn was I taken aback by how expertly crafted the first Spider-Man is. And I wasn't even at the 20-minute mark yet. Granted, it had some issues, namely some of the action being a bit sluggish, and this line certainly didn't hold up.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you? Did your husband give it to you?
But everything else, the pitch-perfect pacing and plot structure, the well-defined character arcs, the now iconic cinematography, Danny Elfman's just as iconic score. Even the cast, despite some hamming it up more than others, still deliver pretty captivating performances. I could literally gush for days about how much this film just works on so many levels. With this in mind, I thought that if the first film was this great upon rewatch, I was prepared for Spider-Man 2 to knock my socks off and then some. So without hesitation, I popped in Spider-Man 2 and... I mean, it's good, I guess? Oh boy, here we go. Yeah, I was left a little underwhelmed by Spider-Man 2. I mean, there was a lot to like in the film, especially in the second half, but after watching it, it really disappointed me how much the term overrated came to mind. Now, I think it's best to mention that I'm actually covering the film's director's cut, Spider-Man 2.1. It features a lot of new content, including altered, extended, and even deleted scenes added back into the movie. And while it does a lot to enhance the film, I feel this is also a detriment in places. The theatrical cut of the film is perfectly fine, and aside from a few good additions, the 2.1 cut just feels longer for the sake of being longer. Like, let's take that now infamous scene of J. Jonah Jameson in the Spidey outfit. This scene comes after Peter saying "Spider-Man no more," and a garbage man takes the suit to the Daily Bugle. So they run the story about how Spider-Man's given up, and in the theatrical cut, we immediately cut to Peter's perspective of a world without Spider-Man, where he turns away a guy being mugged. Now that's a great reveal of information. In the 2.1 cut, however, before we cut to Peter, we get... this. What is the point of this? What does this say about the character, the situation going on in the story? That JJ fantasizes about being Spider-Man despite hating him? I genuinely don't know. Instead, I just get the sense it was added in just for the sake of being funny. Now, I know what a few of you are probably gonna say. Devin, wasn't it reported a while ago that Thor Ragnarok's runtime was extended just because Taika Waititi liked all the funny bits? Yeah, but here's where the difference lies. Scenes like Thor's story about Loki as a snake, or the Get Help scene, while they're still funny, they also inform us about aspects about these characters, specifically Thor and Loki's relationship as kids. Here, I just don't think there's a point to this scene, especially considering there's another scene later on in the film that functions much better on both revealing JJ's true feelings on Spider-Man, while also being kind of funny. So yeah, I much prefer the theatrical cut to 2.1. It's more tightly knit and a much smoother watch. Now, assuming I haven't lost a few of you with all of my negative energy, I will bring up some positives about the film. Danny Elfman's score is once again a straight banger, and the cinematography is still godlike, thanks in part to the awesome Bill Pope, the same director of photography behind The Matrix, The Jungle Book, and Baby Driver, to name a few. The action is also much improved, being more kinetic and fast-paced than the first film. Scenes like the bank robbery, and of course the iconic train fight. Even the car chase Peter comes across on the way to MJ's play feels lively and energetic. And for the most part, the writing is really on point. Alvin Sargent's script is just as well paced and structured as the first film. Hey, future Devin here editing this. I just want to make a quick note that as I was writing this, it was announced that Alvin Sargent had actually passed away. He was a great writer and a great talent in the industry, and I just wanted to say my thoughts are with his friends and family at this time. And overall, the writing in general just leads to telling a really good Spider-Man story. On paper. This is where my big gripes with Spider-Man 2 come into play. The overarching story that Raimi and team are trying to tell is there and gives the plot a natural progression, but how it's portrayed comes off as super mean-spirited. I mean, I get it, Peter Parker's life sucks, and having a double life would lead to conflict, but how people constantly dunk on him, especially Harry and MJ, just feels ultra depressing. Compare this to the first film. Yes, there were scenes where Peter got the short end of the stick on a lot of things, but no one ever treated him like he killed a man. In Harry's case, quite literally. This scene at the gala just put a bad taste in my mouth anytime I watch it. Whether this was Raimi's intention to put the audience in Peter's shoes is debatable, I guess, but I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. All of my other problems with the film mainly boil down to bare nitpicks. I can't say anyone gives a bad performance in the film, but there are times when the line delivery feels way off, like this scene with Peter and MJ.
I liked seeing you tonight, Peter.
Oh boy, yeah.
Oh boy, yeah. What?
Oh, that is disgusting.
It's really weird that the previous film would have such natural dialogue between the two, and yet when the sequel comes around, it's like their chemistry was thrown in the trash. At least in the first half. After Peter has his heart-to-heart with Aunt May in the second half, their scenes after the fact are actually really good. Speaking of MJ... Oh, honey, what did they do to you? Again, let's compare this to the first film. Mary Jane Watson is a very well-rounded and likable character and fits the mold of Peter's love interest very well, while also making her wants and desires just as prevalent as our protagonist, while not coming across as selfish. We gotta wait till Spider-Man 3 to get to that point.
This isn't about you.
It's about me.
I'll admit she was still pretty likable at the beginning of the film, and even during the third act she was alright. During that middle section though?
Oh, you.
Yikes! Throughout the entire second act, MJ just becomes a complete witch. I mean, I get it, Peter's let her down, and he does say some boneheaded things, but it's like after skipping the play, she treats him like he cheated on her or something. Again, we gotta wait till Spider-Man 3 for that to actually happen. I'm not asking for her, or even Harry, to be compliant with Peter's actions, but it just feeds more into that mean-spirited tone I was talking about. And the only other nitpick I have pertains to the villain. Now, don't get it twisted, Alfred Molina is excellent as Dr. Octopus. He's charismatic, cunning, and comes dangerously close to rivaling Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. Where he falls short comes in the film's climax and Otto Octavius' sudden redemption. And I mean that. Otto was well prepared to kill Peter right then and there, but then Peter says some encouraging words and now he's like, yeah, sure, let's be friends. Let me just will my own arms into agreeing with me. In all of Raimi's Spidey films, the villains all have a connection to Peter in some fashion and mirror what would happen if Peter gave into his desires for any of the one thing the villains represent, and to have their flaws consume them, showing Peter that for all the good he does, he can't save everyone. It happened to Norman, it happened to Eddie, and to an extent it happened to Flint Marko. The only exception, I suppose, is Harry, though his redemption was smooth enough for it to make sense. For Otto, however, this notion is thrown out the window when the opportunity perfectly presents itself to follow this trend in the best way possible. Doc Ock is a vain, egotistical super genius and wants everyone to know it. The film makes this clear once Otto goes on his trek to rebuild his machine, but once Peter turns him good again, it doesn't feel earned. It suffers from D&D syndrome. I'm still not over this, Benioff and Weiss! Anyway, I'm getting off track here. Do I think Spider-Man 2 is a good film? Yes, absolutely. I'd even go as far as to say it's a great film. I'm just not in the camp that would call it one of the greatest comic book films of all time. Not because I don't think it's good, but probably just because it didn't resonate with me. And that's not a bad thing. There are plenty of films I like that don't particularly speak to me on a certain level. It's just that the first Raimi film did, and this one didn't. There was a sense of optimism that resonated through all of Peter's trials and tribulations that I related and connected to, that I just didn't with this one, with its overbearing angst on its hero. Which again, isn't bad. There are plenty of Spider-Man stories that deal with that. It's just this one went a little too far for me. But if it was okay with you, then I can't take that away from you. And ultimately, that's why I wanted to make this video. After the latest trailer for Far From Home came out, there was a lot of discourse surrounding this interpretation of the character that I just kinda got sick of seeing. I Am That Robbie made an excellent video about the whole thing, and I highly recommend you check it out. For me personally, I feel like we all need to put our pitchforks down and understand that each version of Spider-Man should be allowed to be different. Not necessarily change what the character is about, but allow him in different situations, different scenarios, different shoes of other people. Let other actors and writers craft a version of the character that, though it may not speak to you, does speak to someone else. Because that's what makes the character special. As an older wall crawler once said, what makes you different is what makes you Spider-Man. Except for Amazing Spider-Man 2. That movie is hot garbage. Well, that was fun. You know, I guess with Far From Home coming out, I should probably do something that's a little bit more positive Spidey related. Probably gonna need some help with it, though. I know just the guy.
Alrighty. The next part of the Avatar dub is officially done in terms of editing. Now just got to render. People are going to be happy that this is out as fast as it is, considering part 10 was delayed several times. A year. We're not going to talk about that. This is going to take a while to render, isn't it? Well, what the hell am I supposed to do for the next approximately 15 minutes?
Hey, Jeremy. You got a minute? Hey guys, what's going on? Devin here. Hope you guys are having a good day so far. Thank you so much for checking out today's video. This was a lot of strenuous time to put together, but I hope you guys enjoy it all the same. And yes, as the credits teased, I will be working on another Spidey video with Jeremy Noir Productions. I won't necessarily reveal what it is right now, but you can kind of already figure out what we're going to be talking about. But until then, be sure to like this video, share it around with your friends, comment below what your favorite version of Spider-Man is, as well as subscribe and ring the bell so that you know when I upload videos next. Because YouTube just has no idea what it's doing anymore. As well, be sure to follow me on both Twitter and Instagram for more information on yours truly. And until then, I would say that's about it. Thank you guys so much as always for watching. Devos out.